I've gone ahead and made a light manager for Unreal Engine to easily select and modify groups of lights, individual lights, whatever you need with a lot of control. Now it is on Fab and it does cost $20. So if that is a deal breaker, click off the video right now. Otherwise, if you're interested in seeing what it can offer, I'll show you. So this right here is the entire light manager in its current form. You have the selection section and the modification section. I'll go through each one of these settings so you know everything it has to offer. Here in the level, I just have a few lights. These front three are all static, the middle ones are stationary, and the back ones are movable, with the default skylight and directional lights in the level as well. And if I want to select any light of any mobility and any visibility, I hit select, and it goes ahead and selects all of the lights. But this is where this section comes in handy. I can select only the point lights, for example. I hit select, and then only the point lights are selected. Or I can select specifically the point lights that are stationary, and then hit select. This of course works with multiple, so I can select the stationary and movable point lights and spotlights, and now it'll select both of these sections. So you're quickly able to change the kind of lights and the mobility of the lights you have selected, as well if the light is visible. And when you turn visibility off for a light, it effectively disables the effect of the light. So down the modification section, we can actually set the visibility. So if I was to make one of the lights off, I'll also be able to search for it as invisible. If I, for example, turn off visibility and turn off any visibility, and set to any mobility, any light, but not visible, hit select, nothing gets selected because none of them are currently set to be not visible. But if I set visibility on, it selects them all again. Down below, we have a little bit more advanced selection. I can select by intensity, by radius, and by distance from something. I've gone ahead and tweaked some of the values so you can better see how it works. So we have two inputs here, a minimum and a maximum, and we have intensity, radius, and distance all have min, max, and in range. Basically, minimum will check the minimum input here, so it will be at least this value. Maximum will be at most this value, and it is inclusive, so if you specify 10, then it will include the number 10. And in range, we'll check, again, in between minimum and maximum, so we'll use both of these fields. If you do end up getting the light manager, it does come with full documentation written out, so you don't need to worry about forgetting what everything does. I got you covered. So minimum intensity, if I hit minimum, it'll select everything, because everything has at least 0 intensity. Because most of these things have at least 8 intensity or so. If I change this minimum to 10, and say minimum, it will deselect all of this stuff, because these guys have a light intensity of 8, the directional light has a light intensity of 6, and the skylight has a light intensity of 1. Now, if I say maximum of 10, then it will select the opposite. It'll select these guys and deselect these. Now, this completely works with the light type and mobility. I can select just the point lights that fit into this description. So if I say max, it will select just this light, which is at maximum of 10 intensity, and that is a point light that is of any mobility. I'll go ahead and reset it back to any light and any mobility, and we can go on to radius. If I select minimum of 10 radius, it selects anything that has an attenuation radius. So directional lights and a skylight doesn't have an attenuation radius, so it doesn't select any of them. If I set this to something like 1000 and say minimum, it will deselect this one, which has an attenuation radius of 500. Every other one has it more. So we can specify, for example, I want something between 1 and 2000 in range, and I'll select all of these to have right in between. If I selected something between 1500 and 2000 and hit in range, it only selects this one that has a higher attenuation radius. Now, distance here is quite interesting. Distance is how far away from your selected objects are these lights. So if I select this light over here, and I can even select the ground, it doesn't need to be specifically a light. I select anything, and I want to select everything that is at most 2000 units away from this point. And now it will select pretty much all of the lights because they're all within this range. If I select this light again, and at 200 of a max, I select the max button, it only selects itself because these lights are too far away. So at a 500 range, if I hit max, you can see it has selected these lights here, but all other lights are deselected. And again, this works with the light type. So if you want to select only your point lights within a certain range, you can. You can also select within multiple points here. Actually, both of these points, and say something within 300 units, select max. And now within this point and this point, these are now selected. This also works for minimum, of course. So if I set 300 as the minimum and I hit minimum, it'll deselect this point. It is not within 300, and it'll select everything else around it. So you can really quickly just bulk select specific type of lights within specific parameters. You're also able to select by lighting channel. Now, the way any match and exact match work is any match checks if this is on, it checks, hey, does any of them have this channel on, and ignores all channels that are disabled. So if I say any match, it selects everything except the skylight that doesn't have channels enabled. Now, exact match means it will check that it exactly is on for channel 0, off on channel 1, and off on channel 2. So if I hit exact match, then you can see only these lights here have been selected because the other ones I've given custom channels. If I select channel 0 and 2 and then hit exact match, you'll see I get this one specifically because this one has specifically channels 1 and 2. I can, of course, change it to any match of 1, and these two have channel 1 also specified. So these are all the different ways you can quickly select all your lights. And again, all the options kind of work with each other. So you can specify point lights that are of channel 1, or you can get them of a specific radius, etc. Now, it's great that you can select all of these, but we also want to modify them. So starting with mobility, these guys in the back here are set to movable. If I want to change them to static, I just select static and hit set, and they become static. And again, I can drop down, go to movable, hit set, and you can see the icon here has changed, and now they're movable again. So really quickly, you could find all your movable lights if you're doing a light bake and set them all to static, or change them back to movable or stationary in quick bulk fashion. The next section here is the modify amount, and this is what is used for a lot of the stuff down here, because we can modify the intensity and the radius of the selected lights. So if I select all of my point lights, I can now modify their intensity. I can set it, multiply it, divide it, add to it, and subtract to it. If I change the modify amount to 2, and I hit multiply, and hit multiply once, twice, 3 times, you can see it is getting brighter and brighter. I can divide it, 1, 2, 3, get it back to where it was. I can add to it and subtract from it. And of course, I can just outright set it. And if I want to, I can go ahead and just set it to something like 2000. And everything I'm doing also has an undo. So you can just undo anything you did. In case you did the wrong setting or the wrong option, you can always undo it all. Next option is to change the radius. And again, I can hit set and it'll set the radius. You can see all 3 of these lights have a larger radius now. I can change it to something like 20, set, and now they have a really tiny radius. I can then multiply the radius to make it bigger, divide, same thing, add, subtract, and it all goes off of this modify amount. And the next thing I can do is modify the color. Now, by default, this is white, but if I want to, I can just click and drag my mouse, and it will change the color here. Now, it does the color here and the value here. So again, if I click and drag, I can get it a brighter or a darker value, and then I can hit the set button, and it will change it to this color. Now, if I'm somewhere else, and let's say I want to set this color on something else. Let's say I want to set it onto this light here, but I've gone ahead and I've reselected something. I have a different one where I can go ahead and select this green one, hit the get button. It gets me this color exactly. Then I can come here, select the one I want, or select it by bulk, and then hit set, and it goes ahead and changes the color. And again, if I want to modify it, I can then just modify it to be whatever I want, and then hit set again. And now I have this lime green. And if I want to, I can also adjust it to use the temperature. If I get the value, it gets the value into the modify amounts. If I press get value, it gets it to 6500. If I go with this back one here, I can turn on use temperature to be on and hit set. It is now enabled use temperature. And now I can change the 6500 to, let's say, just 500, and then hit set value. And you can see it has adjusted the value here. And if I want to change it to something else, I can change the temperature here to 3500 and the modify amount, hit set. And again, the color has changed. And if I want to, then I can just multiply the intensity by the intensity and make it as bright or as dark as I want. Again, bulk editing it here. I'm also able to change the channels here. So if I don't want channel 0, I want to be specifically channel 2, I can just swap it out, and you can see the light has basically gone away because this floor does not receive from channel 2. I'll go ahead and undo it, but you can quickly set the channels you want on your lights, and then later on you can select by the channel if you would so wish. And the final options here are the ability to turn on cast shadows and the visibility. As I mentioned before, visibility basically turns something off. So if I turn visibility to off, you can see the light is no longer emitting anything. Now, it is still visible here, so unlike visibility for static mesh, where it disappears from the viewport entirely, for light, it disables the light from actually casting anything, as you can see, but visually you can still see it and select it in the viewport. So now if I wanted to, I can go and turn off visible and any visibility, and then hit any light, any mobility, hit select, and it'll select it. And then if I want just the visible ones, I can select specifically the visible ones, and it does not select this one, or again, any visibility, selects all of them. So that's kind of the big rundown of the Light Manager. Now, Unreal does have this light mixer. My Light Manager is not meant to replace this. It's just meant to work in conjunction. So that way you can really quickly select by certain categories, adjust your values. This is still a nice way of being able to just quickly look at your lights by color, by light channel, etc. And you can of course select them in here. They just offer different functionality for slightly different use cases, and you combine both of them together, you're able to accomplish a lot more, I find. Now, if you're seeing this and you're like, oh man, I wish they had this one other feature, then I would get it. Let me know what the feature is, and I'll happily add it. Or if you find bugs, you know where to contact me. Let me know, and I'll make sure to fix them as soon as I can. It is currently available in 5.3, 4, and 5, and of course, I'll continue pushing it out for further versions as well. And of course, the link to it will be in the description below. Happy lighting, everyone.